Folks, one of the things I love to do at One Rental at a Time is bring you new faces with new stories. This one's extra special. We have a living legend in the real estate game with us. And what I mean by that is this young man here created a book that I read at the very beginning of my journey. 52 Homes in 52 Weeks, if I remember it correctly, has written many, many other bestsellers, has collaborated with Rich Dad Poor Dad and many other things. We've got the one and only Dolph DeRoos. How you doing, Dolph?
I'm doing great, thanks, Micah. How are you doing today?
I am doing very, very well. You're actually all the way over in Europe doing
I
this
am
for
this
us.
week, yes. I'm down on the island of Malta, which is a tiny little island, only 13 miles wide, 19 miles long, in the middle of the Mediterranean, about 60 miles south of Sicily. But it's a fascinating little place, and it's got its own real estate story, but maybe that's for another day.
There you go. Well, again, you have been in the real estate game for a long time. If somebody hasn't heard of you, shame on them. But why don't you give your bio, kind of walk us through your history in real estate?
Oh my gosh, that probably could consume half the program. But I came from a very modest family. I was told that if you want to do well in life and succeed, you have to study hard and get a degree because that's what my parents found out. They didn't have the opportunity to study and get a degree. So, they said to get a jump on everyone, you need a degree. So without thinking, when I finished high school, off I went to university. Didn't know what I wanted to study. Um, but I ended up doing engineering through a process of elimination. And then I looked around at me, the people with the degrees, the tutors and the professors and the lecturers, and they seemed to me to be anything but rich. They drove tiny little cars, had modest homes, and wore kind of very simple clothes. And I thought, there's something wrong with this correlation that degrees equates to wealth. So I decided to take it upon myself to make a study of the rich, thinking, Michael, very naively, if I could identify 30 or 40 things that they had in common, and if I could emulate at least some of them, that I have a good shot at being rich. It's a good theory. But the challenge was I could hardly find anything that the rich had in common. It wasn't age or gender or religion or country of birth or country of origin or whether you're the firstborn in the family. I could only find two things that they had in common. And one of them is that almost without exception, the rich either made their money or held their wealth in real estate. And I thought, well, if that's it, I can do that. So at the tender age of 17, when, by the way, I looked about 12, I set about finding a property and I found one that I thought was good. I had no money. So as a young student, I went to four trading banks to ask for the maximum student loan. And fortunately, none of them asked me if I'd also gone to other banks because I probably would have been honest and said, well, yes. And I managed to get together $4,000. And then I had to get a mortgage, of course. I went to a bank. I gave him my spiel as to why I thought this was a great deal. And then eventually he leaned forward. He said, are you done? And I thought, that's an odd question. I said, yes. He said, this is a hoax, isn't it? He thought it was a university prank. And I was devastated because I was flat serious. But fortunately, I didn't say, well, clearly I'm not cut out for this game. And I kept going. I went to 8 banks. And finally, a bank manager said, you know what? I'll take a chance on you. And I would much rather have said, oh my gosh, that's such a good deal. I wish I'd found it. But I was happy with I'll take a chance. Bought the property. At the end of that first month, Michael, I had received more money in rent than that month's allocation of property taxes, insurance, mortgage payment, you name it. I thought, I've made money and I haven't worked for it, so I've got to do it again. So I did it again and again. That's basically how I got started.
Yeah, that is amazing. Now, just to give people a time frame, what year was this? Do you happen to remember that first
Oh
transaction?
my gosh, I'm talking about the early 80s. It's a long time ago now. Um,
Well,
so
that's what I
yes,
mean by living legend. Again, I like to talk. My audience thinks I've been doing it a long time, and I've been doing it 25 years. Right? You're you're
which is
you're
a
you're
long time, but
yeah. You're talking 45 years. So this is
right.
you've seen lots and lots of things.
Yeah.
So many. Well, let's talk about your books. You've written several bestsellers. If you were to highlight two or three that somebody's going to watch this, like your story, like you as a human being, what would be the two or three books you would recommend people go check out? To really see what you're all about.
Well, the one that I'd recommend above all others is the book called Real Estate Riches. And it's done extraordinarily well. I think we've done over 2 million copies, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list for 7 months straight, which apparently is an extraordinary record. If a book's there for a day, the authors are ecstatic. And if it's there for a week, they think they've hit a gold mine, right? So to be there that long, it just shows a couple of things, though. It's been translated into 6 languages, and it's been on bestseller lists in 18 countries. But the reason I say that's the book I'd recommend, Michael, is unlike most other books that I've written and that just about everyone else has written on real estate, those other books are all how-to books.
Mm,
And Real Estate Riches isn't so much a how-to book as a why-to book, because
yes.
there is a theory that once you understand the why, you'll figure out your own how. And I've had real estate agents, for instance, read this book and they'll come to me and they'll say, Dolph, I've been an agent for 17 years. I've made a lot of money selling properties to investors. But now I want to be an investor after reading this book. I no longer want to focus on the 6% commission. I want to focus on the 94% that I'm missing out on. So it's really turned a lot of people around from thinking real estate is dodgy or scary or whatever into saying, wow, I want in on this. So that's the first one. And then I'm going to make a big leap of faith because many of your listeners are probably thinking of or already involved in residential real estate. And that's very good. I've written, I think, 13 books on residential real estate, and I claim it's better than just about any other investment out there, whether it's unit trusts or certificates of deposit or treasury bills or stocks and bonds and you name it. And I stand by that. However, if you're going to be in real estate and you've got a few residential properties under your belt, then at some stage you might want to consider making the shift to commercial property. I think commercial has tremendous advantages. And I make a bold claim in my book on commercial real estate that once you understand how good commercial is, you'll never want to look at another house again, unless it's perhaps one you're going to live in. So I recommend as a follow-up, read my book. It's got a simple name, Commercial Real Estate Investing. And Michael, I was blessed. I've got the world's biggest publisher, John Wiley and Sons. They started in 1807, and apparently they're the biggest in the world. And they did 5 or 6 of my books, which is a real feather in my cap, I guess. But I remember when I was finishing that book, I said, we need a really interesting title. And they said, like what? And I said, well, there's another book out there, and I wish I'd thought of the title, but the title of that book is My Dad Thinks I Rob Banks. I mean, to me, that's a catchy title, right, for a real
Yeah.
estate book. But they said, no, it's not descriptive enough. And so they ended up calling it commercial real estate investing, which I think makes you yawn, sort of thing, but it is very descriptive. So, anyway, there's real estate riches and then commercial real estate investing. The one that's perhaps the most fun, and you alluded to it already, is the 52 homes in 52 weeks.
Yeah.
And briefly, Micah, how that came about is I had a meeting cancel on me in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I jumped on a plane and went to Las Vegas. It's only a 37-minute flight. So I guess it's longer standing in line for security than being in the air. And I came back to Phoenix just as my office was closing. And as all my staff were leaving, they said, where did you go for the afternoon? And I said, I went to Vegas. And they said, what, to gamble? I said, no, I don't gamble. I think the real jackpots are out in the suburbs. I said, I bought a house using none of my own money and it's cash flow positive. And my staff, and you've got to remember, we're a real estate education company and a real estate investment company. My staff said, but you can't do that. And I thought, well, if my staff think that's impossible, how's the rest of the world going to believe it? So I made a bold statement the next day publicly. I kind of regretted it for a long time, saying, I'm going to buy one house a week for an entire year using none of my own money, and they're all cash flow positive, just to prove it can be done.
Yeah.
And that's how that project got started. I say I regretted it because I was 3 months into it and I'd bought a sum total of 2 properties. And I thought, I'm not just going to have egg on my face, I'm going to have an entire omelette. But anyway, I got into the swing of things and I finished the project in 9 months. And so it led to a very scientific conclusion that it is possible to buy 52 homes in 9 months, the same time as it takes to produce only one baby. I think that's a pretty good trade-off.
No, I think it is. Again, you've done so much in real estate. Hopefully we get the opportunity to do this again. I'm trying to introduce you to the audience. Let's talk about commercial real estate, what I see coming, and compare it to the great financial crisis, because I think it's really comical for me to kind of look at what mistakes we repeated. If I were to
Right.
look at what caused the GFC, it was bad assumptions, right? Real estate only goes up. I remember people saying that endlessly. We had 51% of loans originated as ARMs instead of fixed back in '06. We had horrible loan structures, ninja loans and neg am loans and all of these things. And, you fast forward 2 years and those things start to blow up. When I look at commercial today, it appears, at least in the multifamily place, according to Ken McElroy, for example, Class A is retrading and retrading at a 25% discount roughly. But Class B and Class C are not retrading, right? Because they're just frozen. There's no price discovery. Is it reasonable for me to think that if Class A is trading at a 25% discount, that Class B and Class C may ultimately trade at a 40% discount? Because again, bad assumptions, not fixed rate debt, bridge loans, heaven forbid. Is that kind of pain coming to Class B and Class C, perhaps?
Um, well, firstly, I don't know. The truth is, I do have a crystal ball, Michael, and I'm happy to share everything that it tells me with you. However, history has shown my crystal ball to be absolutely no more accurate than anyone else's crystal ball, even those who claim that theirs is accurate. So that's a disclaimer. And secondly, and I know Ken, and he's a great guy, and I think he does a lot in the apartment space.
Sure.
And for some bizarre reason that I cannot understand, and I'm not picking on America, I live there and I live there by choice. I can live just about anywhere with my range of citizenships and everything. So I live there by choice. But for some reason that defies logic, apartment complexes are considered to be commercial real estate for appraisal purposes and for financing purposes. And it's all too complex for me. I'm a much simpler person. To me, residential real estate is real estate where people have residences, and commercial real estate is real estate where people conduct commerce. Now, I know some
Ah,
smart Alex will be saying, well, I know someone who conducts commerce in their bedroom, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general, right? So a fire station, commercial, a fish and chip shop, commercial, an apartment complex, residential. So I think you were probably talking about Class A, 25% discount, B and C on the residential space.
correct.
Um, yes. So again, I'm not sure. I think the reason why there's a discount right now in Class A is that we've got a glut. I mean, they're building all over the show. In the city where I'm based, Phoenix, they're not just building 1 or 200 unit apartment complexes. Like on the corner of Central and Indian School, there's an 800 unit apartment complex. If they have an average of 1.5 people, that's 1,200 people accommodated in that one corner. And they're sprouting up all over the show. And builders aren't going to build old stock. They can only build new by definition. So it's all Class A when it goes up. So there's going to be a glut. And coupled with the fact that right now we're perhaps eliminating part of the rental market that might have occupied the B and C because they're leaving the country. I'm trying to walk very gingerly here and not show any political affiliation. And by the way, I don't have any political affiliation. I am apolitical. And as a green card holder, I'm not even allowed to vote. So there you go. But having said all of that, I think when it comes to apartments, the thing is in the States, the population is still increasing. Now, that's a blessing because you look at Japan, and I love Japan, Michael. I love the culture, the food. I learned the language as a kid. Current population, 127 million. They think that by 2060, which isn't that far away, by the way, today, June the 2nd, we're now closer to 2050 than we are to 2000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 2060 isn't that far away. They think the population of Japan will drop from 127 million down to 80 million. Right now, there are 16 million homes that are on the market in Japan, vacant, and you can buy them for about $100. And you might say, well, why wouldn't you buy a dozen of them? Well, because you can't get a tenant for them. And by the way, by the end of this year, they think it's going to be 20 million homes.
Mm,
So they've got a problem where they've got a declining population and there's going to be a glut and surplus of stock. Whereas in the States, our population, despite the current policies, it's still trending upwards, which means next year there's going to be more demand for rental accommodation than this year and the year after, even more. So I think what you said is true. We used to say with the GFC or before the GFC, real estate only went up. It doesn't. It goes up in fits and starts. But here's the codicil I'd add to that, the qualification. And that is that each peak tends to be higher than the previous peak, and each trough tends to be higher than the previous trough. So if you're a trader in real estate, you have to buy low and sell high. And you're worried at night if you bought at the right moment and should you sell or should you wait? And whereas if you buy for the long term, and by the way, by the long term, I don't just mean 5 years, I mean forever. The
mm.
exit strategy isn't death. the exit strategy is whoever you bequeath it to, they keep it going. If you're willing to ride those cycles, then it just keeps on going up exponentially almost. And it's all on borrowed money. And the funny thing is that the value of the money you borrow, the mortgage, goes down, whereas the value of the property that mortgage buys goes up. It's a double win, and most people don't realize that. So to answer your question, to get really to the point, I think that B grade, they're not going to build any more of it. I think they're going to stop building A grade soon, and they're going to wait for the market to catch up. So if you've got stuff, I'm hanging on to it. Having said that, you did mention at the beginning commercial real estate.
Mhm.
That's even more interesting because we all know there's a glut of office space, changing trends, COVID, people not. However, they've hardly built any new office space in the last 8 years.
Right.
And the population's still increasing, and there are some people that still use offices. Accountants tend to go to offices, lawyers tend to have their meetings in offices. So, with nothing new being built and many existing commercial buildings being converted to residential accommodation mainly, but also pickleball courts and everything else under the sun, there's going to be a shortage. I think there's going to be a massive buying opportunity.
I
And
love
I
it.
know I'm talking a lot, but that's part
No,
of the
it's
game,
this.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book by Nassim Taleb called The Black Swan, and it's not to be confused with the movie of the same name, which is more of a fictional story. But he uses the black swan as an analogy because for all of history, we knew that all swans were white. I mean, if you had a swan, it was white. That was just the way it was. And then it was somewhere around 1869 when these explorers were crossing the center of Australia on camelback when they discovered these swans that were black. And so Taleb uses the term black swan as an analogy for something that you don't expect happens, but it happens anyway. Or it could be something that you expect will happen because there's monsoon every season or whatever. And then for some doggone reason, it doesn't happen. So the trick in life is to expect a black swan, to not only expect them, but to depend on them. Because most people are so averse to them, they try and shy away from them. And then when it happens, they think it's a calamity, the GFC, COVID, a glut of whatever. Whereas if you figure it out in your calculation that no, something else is going to happen soon, and you capitalize on that, then you're in a position to win.
I love that. Again, this is really about striking and creating opportunities. Again, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the commercial space. You actually shared a story at Deal Champs, Jason Dean Stratton for putting on, about how a bucket of paint increased the value of a commercial real estate, a piece of real estate. Do you remember this story?
Oh, I do. And Deal Champs, by the way, great event. Thank you, Dean, for putting it on, and hope to see more of them. But yes, this is a thing where you can get really creative. If, as an investor in real estate, you just think, well, the average returns are 6.8%, so I'll buy a property, I'll get my 6.8%, pay my mortgage off, and hopefully in 30 years I'll be worth a bit more. That's a slow way of doing it. The thing I absolutely love about real estate, Michael, that I can't replicate in any other investment is that I can use whatever creativity I might have up there to create extra value. And by that, I mean, if I buy $1 million worth of stock, there's nothing I can do to increase the value of my stock other than write letters of encouragement to the directors, hoping that that puts them in a good mood and they'll work. I mean, there's nothing you can do. So one of my books is called 101 Ways to Massively Increase the Value of Your Real Estate Without Spending Much Money. And it wasn't easy to come up with 101 ideas because it was hard to limit it to 101. There are so many more. But the one you're referring to is where we turned $20 into 2 million overnight. And I could imagine there are some of your listeners or viewers who are thinking, right, Dolph, up till now, you kind of had us thinking that's all plausible, but that's beyond the realm of possibility. If it were possible to turn $20 into 2 million overnight, then surely everyone would be doing it every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So let me counter that by saying you can't do it on every property, obviously, but when the time is right, you can. So to explain how that was done, the $20 was spent, as you already suggested, on a bucket of white paint. To understand how you turned it into $2 million, I've got to set the scene a little bit. It happened in Jakarta. Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia. It's got many claims to fame, but one of them is that it's the most congested city on this planet. That means that the drive from the CBD, the Central Business District, to the airport normally should take about 45 minutes. But because of traffic, it can take 3 hours, it can take 6 hours. So if you've got a director of a company as a tenant in your commercial building and he has a 9 a.m. board meeting, he cannot book a 2 p.m. flight because he may not make it. So what I did is I took my bucket of white paint, went onto the roof of the building. It was a flat concrete roof, and I painted a big white circle. And in the middle, I painted the letter H, and I turned it into a helipad. Now, full disclosure, and obviously you need their version of Federal Aviation Authority. It's called the Civil Aviation Authority down there, the CAA. You need their approval and all kinds of permits and other things going on. But that's formalities and letter writing and applications and fees and promises of helicopter rides and all things like that. But with that in hand, we could turn it into a helipad. And now the ride to the airport was 15 minutes. And in Indonesia, they use square meters, of course, like most of the world, and they have rupiah there, about 14,500 rupiah to the dollar. So everyone's a billionaire there. But when you convert it from rupiahs per square meter down to US dollars per square foot, the rental used to be about $14 a foot. And by putting the helipad in, we raised it to $16 a foot. That was a fair increase. About half the tenants thought they could perhaps use the service and it was worth it for them. The other half that knew they'd probably never use it, they thought it was worth it because they had bragging rights, right? Our building's got a helipad, And so about 100,000 square feet times a $2 a foot lift. That means the rent went up by $200,000 a year. And at a 10% cap rate, the then prevailing cap rate, the value of the building went up by 2 million. And
Bucket of
these are,
paint.
yeah, bucket of paint. And it's what you create inside your head. That's why one of my favorite sayings is the most valuable piece of real estate is the 6 inches, give or take an inch or two between your right ear and your left ear, because it's what you create in that space that ultimately determines who you are, whom you get to hang with, whom you get to do things with, what real estate you invest in, all that stuff.
Yeah, the other thing I love about your story, unlike lots of folks, is most folks kind of stay, in an area, myself included, right? Most of my investing has been in Central California. Most of it's been, in your words, residential. But you've done deals all over the world. Do the basics apply everywhere? It's just language and loan differences, or tell us about investing in rest of world ex United States.
It's an interesting point because if you study to become a doctor, for instance, in the US, you can't just move to France and practice as a doctor. You'd be arrested. I have a friend, he's a dermatologist, studied in Austria. He moved to Australia. It was so difficult to get requalified in Australia that he decided to become a pig farmer. And he's quite happy doing that, by the way. It's a very lucrative thing for him. If you're a pilot, you just can't go anywhere and ply your trade. A lawyer for sure can only practice in the country in which he studied because he studied the local laws. But when you're a real estate investor, not only do you not need to be qualified, but when you do go to another country, they welcome you with open arms because they think, well, you're investing, you must be bringing money with you. And even if you don't, because I'd recommend you borrow locally, you don't want the exchange rate risk when you invest in another country. But even so, they welcome you with open arms. So that's the first thing. It's a universal thing. And yes, the terminology is different. For the Americans listening or watching, perhaps, we're very familiar with what a foreclosure is. A foreclosure is a uniquely American thing. I say American because it's probably in Canada a bit too. We have foreclosure sales. They don't exist in the rest of the world. And you might think, well, what happens when you default on your mortgage? Well, the bank still takes it over, but it's called a mortgagee sale or a mortgagee in possession sale or a redemption sale. In America, we have appraisers. In the rest of the English speaking world, we have valuers. We walk on a sidewalk and the rest of the world walks on a footpath or the pavement. We in America drive on a parkway and park on a driveway in another place. It's terminology. My point is the words are different, but the meaning's the same. There's not much variation in real estate, Michael. You have a tenant and a landlord, and the commercial realm that tends to be called the lessee and the lessor, but it doesn't matter whether it's tenant and landlord. Sometimes you'll see signs for rent, sometimes you'll see to let. I mean, what does it matter? It's the same. The concept is the same. You own the real estate and then you rent the use of it to a tenant. And whatever terminology they use, and especially if it's in another language that you're not familiar with, it doesn't matter. And I'll have people excoriate me for investing overseas. And they say, Dolph, it's complex enough to understand the rules and the regulations and the taxes in your own state, let alone your own country. And I say, well, the word state is only used in Australia and America. The rest have provinces or whatever. But apart from that, it's so complex where I am in Arizona that I don't do all of that stuff myself. I have accountants and attorneys to do that. Well, if I have them in Arizona, why wouldn't I have them in California as well and in wherever else I choose to invest? You hire that talent in. What they cost you in annual fees is way less than what they save you or make you with smarter decisions.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love the variety. Not only that, Mike, another thought, and that is that when you do go overseas and seriously look at deals, you'll pick up ideas that you can bring back home, or you can take ideas
Ah,
from home to take there. And you wouldn't have
yeah.
thought of those in a million years if you hadn't traveled.
Yeah, I love that. I'd be remiss if we don't talk about the existing real estate market in the United States. If you look at again residential, Redfin put out a report the other day that we have more sellers than buyers. I think it's a buyer's market for sure in a lot of the country. I've actually said that 2025 is the year of the investor. More supply, less competition, more creativity. Where do you stand, kind of today, real estate market, United States?
I think we're at a point of inflection. I think, there's uncertainty, and whatever you say, and whichever side of the fence you're on, and I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's on any issue where politicians are involved. There are two major camps right now. Whichever side of the fence you're on any of those things, there is uncertainty. And uncertainty is bad for people who want to know that things are going to be steady, and it's great for those who don't mind a bit of uncertainty. I love that saying by Tony Robbins that the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably live with.
Mm,
And if you
yeah,
can't live with uncertainty, then, just don't get into any game. Just put your money under the mattress and you'll be sure it's there in the morning unless there's a fire, right?
yeah,
But if you like uncertainty or don't mind it, and realize that sometimes these trends go at the same time around the world, but if things are not too good in the States, you can look elsewhere. And when they're not good elsewhere, you look in the States. Or if things are turning down, I just read this today. There was a building that was bought in Denver, Colorado for 2.5 million. It appraised 6 years ago at 118 million.
I saw that.
Now, you saw, is that good or bad? Well, it's
Well,
bad for the people who paid 118. It's great for those who are paying 2.5 million, but there are
exactly.
opportunities galore. So
Yeah,
when people say the market's bad right now, it's a buyer's market. Well, aren't we all buyers? I'm always a buyer. I never sell. So I think it's great that it's a buyer's market. Are my properties down a bit yet? Does that bother me? No, because I'm not selling them.
yeah, I love that.
And even, with the GFC, my values came down a lot, but I didn't sell. But my rents only came down by about 8%.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah, rents were really stable in that time. Well, let's end where we started, right? Again, you started by researching the rich. You found one of the common traits that they all either created or kept it in real estate. If you were starting today, do you think something has changed? You got a lot of people out there saying what you did, what I did is impossible today. Do you think if you could get in a time machine and be that 17-year-old kid again, starting today, that you could do a lot of the same things, or is it just impossible and people should give up?
Um, Firstly, I concede it is different now. It's tougher. My daughter's in that age group. She's in her mid-20s. It's much harder for her to start out and to do deal after deal the way that I could when I was her age. I concede that. At the same time, I don't think it's impossible. You see, it's tougher for everyone. And that means that you've just got to figure out a new way of doing things. Everything's different today. It's also easier because when we wanted to look at properties in another city, we had to drive there. You couldn't go online. There was no online. When we wanted to find the phone number of an agent in another city, we had to get the yellow pages of that city,
I
normally by
remember.
stealing one from a motel room, and then look it up. And often it would be the wrong number anyway. So it's much easier now. And again, with AI, you can get all this stuff automated to find out where there are good deals. So yes, it's tougher, but don't ruminate on that. Look for the black swan. Look for the exception. Look for, even though it's tough, it's tougher for everyone, and you've got a bit more perseverance, a bit more, what do you want to call it? The throughput than other people, and you're going to find a great deal. The deals are out there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's all about grit. We've become a lot of people have become very soft, but as long as you do the work, you try to get 1% better. You just don't give up. You keep writing offers, disrespectful or not. The chances of getting wealthy in real estate are better, still better than any other thing that I have seen in history. Dolph, give us closing thoughts, and where can people find you and learn more about you?
Oh my gosh, I'm blessed and cursed with a rather unique name, DOLF, Dolph. It rhymes with golf. Starbucks still can't spell it right every time I order a drink, but anyway. but it's DOLF and the name Deroos. But look up Dolph Property and you'll find it, or real estate. But Dolph Deroos, Deroos. I'm all over, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and what's the other one? TikTok. I've got a website, dolphderoos.com. I'm often offering programs. We're doing all kinds of things all the time. So just do a bit of research. If you can't find me on the internet, you'll never find a property. So
Yeah, it should be
give
pretty
up at
easy to
this stage. Um, but my thing is, I'm passionate about helping people. I'm at the point where my main aim is to see how many people I can change from being lethargic TV watchers who don't think there's any hope for them to saying, you know what, maybe I can do it. And they go out and try and they succeed. And that's what I've sort of made my mission, is to help other people get over that hump and go out there and do it.
Well, I've seen you do it. I know your books we talked about earlier on will help people get their real estate riches, 52 homes in 52 weeks, commercial real estate investing. Folks, go get them, check them out. Lots of bestsellers on Amazon. And Dolph, I appreciate you. Thank you for helping me way back when I started 20 years ago. You moved the needle. You showed me what was possible, and I am certainly a feather in your cap. People, one rental at a time does not exist without your motivation 20, 25 years ago. So thank you.
Well, that's very nice to hear, but not only that, that sort of makes it all worthwhile, because that at the end of the day is why we do things. So thank you for the feedback. That's really appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thanks for tuning in from Europe.
Oh, you're so welcome. We'll see you again soon.